Pulsechain and PulseX could be launching relatively soon. And when they do, there is going to be a boatload of projects that are going to be launching on Pulsechain. Today, we're going to take a look at Pulsepot Io. It is almost a blockchain casino, so to speak. So if you like gambling, this could be up your alley. It is also structured a little bit differently, so gambling may not be the best way to describe it. So we're going to talk about how it works so that you can get a good picture, how the profits are paid out, and then we're going to get into 3 concerns that I have about this. So with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good, Jay? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. I put a tweet out, link down below if you'd like to jump over to Twitter, say what's good, asking what projects people were excited about. And this project came up multiple times. Another thing that was also interesting, because it was around 70 people that responded, there was like stuff like this, but then there was also a shitload of NFT type projects, which is interesting because NFT type stuff hasn't always been super stimulating to me, and games have never really been interesting to me. So I was curious to get into these to see. I'm not paying attention to these, but clearly there's an audience that thinks these things are cool. Let me take a look at these and try to get a better understanding so that I can think about how their mind is thinking about these kinds of things, or understand it to a better degree. So let's start here with this token. This is going to be the PLSP token that is going to provide rewards to the holders. So there's no staking from what they say. There's no, I didn't see an audit on the code either, or any mention of an audit on here as well. But just by holding this token, the profits from this game, so if you're like me and you don't game and you don't, like wasting money and stuff like that, you could purchase this token, and 1/3 of the profits around this are actually going to be going towards buying and burning this token, right? So the supply is going to decrease. It's also got a fixed supply. There's only 1 million of these tokens, so super limited supply of these, and it's going to be decreasing. Also, holders of this token are going to be receiving 1/3 of the profits every 6 months in the form of Pulse. So I don't know how all this works because I didn't explain it. I went through all of the data that I could find out here. I went through like the thing that they call like a white paper. Also went through their sacrifice thing here. And I'm not saying you guys should do this. I am not sacrificing, but just checking this thing out. And I went through all the Q&A stuff here that I could find, and I read through these twice to try to really understand what was going on here, because there's some questions, right? You have to. If you're trying to, raise money from people, you should be very fucking clear about what you're trying to do, in my opinion, right? Okay. So you have 1/3 that goes to buy and burn from the profits. You have 1/3 that goes to paying out people every 6 months. How that works, no idea. And I don't know if that's a lottery or just get proportional in terms of the profits. I think they mentioned something along those lines in here. 1% of the 1% is paid out in the airdrop. So they're calling it an airdrop to make it kind of sound cool, I guess. 1% of the total pot is used to pay back to the holders of PLSP holders to ensure the airdrop is significant, right? Because Pulse is going to be like there basically. All of these holders will be airdropped their share of the profits in Pulse tokens every 6 months. Holding this token is analogous to owning part of the project. Holders get a proportional amount of the profits generated from the games as an airdrop. So this could be kind of interesting. If I don't know how exactly that's going to work, but if they're coming out and they're going to pay you every 6 months for just holding the token, that could be valuable, right? We don't know how valuable that will be. It depends on how many people actually use this thing. Holding the token seems more valuable than playing the game, in my opinion. They're also doing a monthly lottery where they're going to be paying out, I believe it's users of the token. Where is it here? Monthly lottery. 1% of the total pot value is reserved for a monthly lottery for the holders of the token. Pulsepot will run 190 spots per day on average, and will designate 33% of the total fees to a monthly lottery. Every PLSP holder will have a chance to win the lottery. Holding one blah 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 grants user one ticket in the lottery. Holding this works as a passive lottery subscription for the holder. So it's kind of interesting, right? Assuming people want to like play these types of things or like put their money into these things and like just make bets and shit. It could be valuable, right? That could be very interesting. Now, I mentioned there's a total of 1 million tokens at the beginning, and there's going to be 1 million that is going to go into a bonus phase after launch, which we'll talk about in a second, and then 100,000 is going to the bonus phase of the 1 million total, and 100,000 is going to be going to the team here. So let's get into that. The participation, right? So and this is only if you're watching this 6 months down the road or after 6 months after Pulse launches, because Pulsechain could launch next year. Right? It's perfectly possible that it could launch next year. Now, the participation is if there is actually there's more than 3 concerns I have with this, but I'm sure they'll be ironed out. Well, hopefully they will be. The participation, if there is $15 or $20 added to the pot, right? That's this thing here. And basically, if there's $15 added to it, then they add in 3 of this token, and they do this perpetually until they run out of that $100,000 bonus token to give away. There's also one other way to get one of these tokens added to that pool. I don't remember what it was, but how does this game actually work, right? Like if people want to play the game, I'm not paying attention to the game portion of it. I skipped over this because it's not something that's super stimulating to me, but there's going to be people who are interested. How do you play the game? I don't really know. They didn't get into the fucking details, but basically it sounds like you just put money into this pot and just hope that your fucking shit wins, right? You can do that with me. But I guess there's a lot of people who like betting or wasting money and stuff, you know? There's a lot of people who like that kind of shit, right? I'm not one of those people, but apparently there's enough to let me know on Twitter multiple times that this could be interesting. I think the token might be far more interesting than the game, personally. Now, the participation thing, once that's all paid out, then it's just going to be the treasury and the max supply with the perpetual buying and burning from the profits on these. Now they claim, so let's get into some of the potential like concerns here, right? Because this is an interesting idea, right? Assuming there's enough people that like wasting money on stuff like this. If there's enough people that do that, the token might be kind of interesting. From my perspective, right? Because you have a very limited supply, a decreasing supply, and it's paying out profits, right? The monthly lottery thing, like that's the value that's probably going to be close to 0 because the probability of winning is probably close to 0. The monthly profits paid out in Pulse, every 6 month profits paid out in Pulse, 1/3 of the total profits from the fees in the system paid out. That is kind of interesting as well. Now, where do these fees come from? There is, anytime that this pot is won, there is a 3% fee of the total pot value. And this is collected if they own less than 100 of these tokens. So for if they have, like, the total fee is represented as 100%. So if you own 50 tokens, then you only pay 50% of the fee, or 1.5% of the total pot value. So what this effectively does is, because you have this in two ways. You can also increase the odds of winning by putting more tokens into the pot, right? Because each one gives you a representation of each dollar, I believe it is, gives you a representation into the pool as a number, right? And they're pulling data from Chainlink, which is, they run a bunch of oracles, so they're pulling data from Chainlink, as at least that's what they said. Although I haven't seen any claims that Chainlink is going to support Pulse yet, but I would assume they probably would, but I don't know. They haven't seen anything publicly saying this. So anyways, this 3% fee is where the buy and burn comes from, what the profits paid out in the 6 months and the monthly lottery comes from. That is how that is actually funded. Now, when you think about this, structuring something this way, you're like, okay, cool, that's kind of interesting. But what does that do? Well, that basically means that small players that don't already have a lot of money, players that don't fully understand this because they're not going to actually read this or comprehend this, are just going to be paying bigger players, right? You know, kind of like in fiat, kind of like in legacy, where you have a bunch of big players, and you can think of, like, the first thing that comes to mind is like fees on a bank account. What are fees on a bank account? They're a tax on the poor people, right, who don't know how to manage money. So in two ways that takes place here. If you don't own a lot of this token, then you're going to be the one who's paying everybody else if you win. And then also, on the other hand, to actually winning, if you put in more money, then you 1-for-1 increase your odds of winning. So it incentivizes the bigger players to win more, and for the smaller players to pay the big players, right? So that's like one thing that I'm like, no, particularly like that. Understandable, there's other reasons why they want to structure it this way. They want to structure it this way to hold, for people to hold these tokens. So you're like, okay, cool. If you put an incentive in place to create some type of outcome, then that outcome has consequences in the other direction. So you got to think about those things, right? So that's what's happening here. Whether it's right or wrong is up to the person who's watching the video, not me. I don't, you know what I mean? I just see it what it is, and I'm like, oh, okay, it is what it is, kind of thing. Now, another question here, and this is just probably a small mistake, but if you go in here, hopefully you guys can see this here. And then the biggest concern is going to be listed in just a moment in here. And it says accumulated fees. 1/3 of all profits is paid back to holders every 6 months. We already talked about it. 1/3 of profits is used to market, buy, and burn this token. 1/3 goes to monthly lottery, right? We've talked about this. So you're like, okay, cool, that's interesting. Except for when you go over here, which is like their sacrifice thing, and then you come down into their Q&A, and it says something different. If you're not aware, 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 is different than 30%, 30%, and 30%. And over here on their page, they say max supply and deflationary. 30% of all profits used, blah, blah, blah. 30% of all profits for this. 30% of all profits for this. So over here, they're saying 1/3, which is 33.33334%, right? So where's this extra 10% going? Probably a mistake, I would guess. Or is this saying that like, oh shit, it's changed? We're actually gonna collect as the team 10% of the profits. If that is the case, cool. Just be upfront about that, right? Because in this case, it says all profits are going to be being paid out. In this case, it's saying 90% of profits are going to be paid out. Does that mean that 10% is going to go into your pockets? Cool. If it is, I don't give a shit. Just be transparent about it. That's all. So that's a concern. You're like, transparency? Not sure. About that, there's bunch of different like grammatical errors or little things like that that you see where spelling is off or that kind of thing. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, they're new, right? They're probably excited to get this thing out and try to raise money to, create this thing. You're like, cool. But the biggest concern thing that I have here is that they say that there's a floor for the price. They think it's $30 because they say in here that they have programmed it into the system, right? They're like, we have programmed this, and these are all the tokens that you can use to play with. Okay, to put into your bet. Somewhere in here, they mention that, oh, here we go. The token will have a guaranteed minimum value of $30 per token in the Pulse.game. If the price from PulseX rises above $30, then this token will use price value from PulseX. The only token with a minimum guaranteed price in Pulse.dot is this. This offers arbitrage opportunities if the price of PLSP falls under $30 on PulseX. So you read that here, and then you read over here on arbitrage, right? So you read that around here. This creates an arbitrage opportunity. Same type of thing. We have a floor because you want to understand these details. If you're going to put your money into something, you want to understand these details. So they say the same exact thing over here, but one thing, like let's read the definition of arbitrage on Investopedia, and then we'll get into why this, might be a concern of mine. Arbitrage, or is a concern of mine. Arbitrage. So Investopedia is like Wikipedia for financial terms. What is arbitrage? Arbitrage is a simultaneous purchase and sale of the same asset in different markets in order to profit from tiny differences in the asset's listed price. It exploits short-lived variations in the price of identical or similar financial instruments in different markets or in different forms. Well, there needs to be a feedback loop. So there's no feedback loop at least that they talk about, right? So in order to have arbitrage, you have to be able to buy something cheaper and sell it at a higher price, right? That's where you're going to have the arbitrage. That's where this is talking about this, right? Arbitrage is a simultaneous purchase and sale of the same asset in different markets. So one is selling for $28, and then in the other market it's selling for $30. So then you purchase the cheap one and you sell in the more expensive market, you make $2, and then you repeat, and then you repeat, and you repeat, and over time that $28 goes to $28.50, to $29, to $29.50, to $29.75, until there's just the fee of the transaction that makes it unprofitable. They don't talk about that whatsoever. There is no way for redemption in here. How is this going to fucking hold value in any way, shape, or form? They don't talk about using this token in any way to hold this value. You can read this, right? What is the 10% feedback loop? Pulsepot updates a token every 5 minutes. When the price of PLSP is under $30 or more, the contract adds the contract adds 10% to the PLSP price in the pot. This ensures constant arbitrage opportunities for players even when the price of PLSP goes above $30 on PulseX. I don't know if they read the definition of what a fucking arbitrage is. right? Just because there's different prices in different marketplaces doesn't mean it's arbitrage. It doesn't mean there's a fucking arbitrage opportunity for people to take advantage of, as they allude to here and in multiple other spots here. You have to be able to close that loop, right? You have to actually be able to close it, otherwise there's no arbitrage opportunity. Think of Grayscale. Grayscale is the investment trust that purchases BTC, Bitcoin, and that's the only thing that they purchase, and then they sell that to investors that are institutional, right? Like hedge funds, mutual funds, private investors, pension funds, etc. So it's a way for these institutional players to get around the rules of things need to be regulated, right? So they can't necessarily invest directly into Bitcoin because Bitcoin is not regulated, but they can invest into an investment trust that is regulated, right? So this way it allows them to get around the rules. But there's a reason that Grayscale has a discount relative to BTC's actual price, because that's effectively what these people are trying to say. But there's no way for anybody to close that loop. I don't have the chart up here, but the other day, Grayscale, this investment trust of BTC, was selling at a 33% discount. So you're like, oh, okay, cool. These people's logic. Oh, cool. It's a 33% discount. Well, somebody can buy that and they can arbitrage that opportunity. Well, you got to understand what a fucking arbitrage is. That means you buy it at a 33% discount and you flip it for the market price. That is not possible, at least with any words or verbiage that they used. There's no way to do that in the system. I don't see this holding $30 a share at all. And there's no mechanism to keep it there other than that's the price in the system. Like you don't even use it in the system for any reason. Like what does that fucking mean? You know? Yeah, I don't know. That's a concern of mine with this. If you guys found this video interesting, or you know somebody else who's like super bullish on this, share this video with them, right? Share this video with them. Maybe there's something I missed, or maybe they need to like pay attention to some of the details that they're not paying attention to. So press the share button. Don't forget to subscribe. Press the bell notification. I'll be dropping more videos all week. If you'd like to check out on Twitter and say which Gucci, what projects are you super interested in? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, jump over to Instagram or my other YouTube channel, the link down below. If you want to support the channel, shop.letstalkpeds, shop.letstalkpeds.com, link down below. Appreciate you. Peace.